when you don't reach the goals that you had set for yourself, it's important that the appropriate measures are taken in terms of evaluating all facets of your program. Player development, player personnel, coaching staff, all of those things. Today we're going to talk about our coaching staff, and after this season I think we've made some significant improvements in our staff to allow us to move towards the goals that we have set for ourselves here at Notre Dame, and that is to be a BCS football team and continue to work towards that end. So I want to start with the offense. We did not reach the goals that we had set offensively, so it was important that we put the pieces together, and we started with the coaching staff. And as I mentioned, I think we've made some significant improvements there by starting with having Chuck Martin move over from the defensive side of the ball and take over as the offensive coordinator. I'm excited about that move. Chuck and I have a shared vision as it relates to our offense. A great communication piece that is involved in having worked with him, and he as well knowing the offensive system that I want to run, which is we're going to continue to run the system that's been put in place. Chuck is experienced and knows what I'm looking for. I think he's an outstanding teacher, outstanding coach. He's great on game day, and I think his addition in that leadership position on offense is as I mentioned, a significant improvement for us relative to where we are after the season. So Chuck will lead the offense. He'll have two significant pieces that are new. First, Scott Booker, who was an intern for us last year, will take over the tight ends position. Scott has effectively been on a 2-year job interview and has been very impressed with his relationships with the players, his understanding of our offense. Specifically, when it comes to the tight end position, you have to have a knowledge of both the running game and the passing game. He's got a great understanding of that. He's going to be an outstanding recruiter for us, and couldn't be more pleased to have Scott on staff with us. You know, when you talk about the offense, the offensive line is really where it all begins. It starts up front, and being able to hire Harry Hestat from Tennessee, and prior to that, the Chicago Bears and Illinois. He's had a great career. He's a great teacher. He brings what we wanted to the offensive line, and that is somebody that really has had all of his experience on the offensive line. He is an offensive line coach. Secondly, philosophically, there was a shared vision is the technique on the offensive line is so crucial to the development of your schemes. He fits very well with Coach Martin and myself relative to our philosophy. And to be able to get Harry here with his experience, we think is a significant improvement to our staff. Also develops great relationships with our players, and you know, will give us a strong recruiter as well when we talk about some certain geographical areas. Also on the offensive side of the ball, we do have some continuity there, which I think when you talk about significant improvements, I think change and continuity are the two things that you're looking for. I think that brings a synergism to your staff when you have new ideas, new ways of doing things. I think when you combine that with what we believe are some very, very good systems in place, we like that. I like that synergy. So we have Mike Denbrock, who was with the tight ends. He will now be our passing game coordinator. Again, Mike has a great deal of experience with me in running our offense. He was my offensive coordinator at Grand Valley State, so he understands what I'm looking for, and again has that shared philosophy. So he will be specifically working with the passing game, and the outside receivers will be his primary focus as it relates to day-to-day working with a specific group. Tony Alford will be working with both our slot receivers, which is our inside receiving core, and our running backs. And there's a there's a duplicate role there in a sense that we want to be able to use our running backs in both the wide receiver position and the running back position. And we think that we have a number of guys that we've recruited that are already in the program that can do both. Tony will also be our recruiting coordinator, and I think his experience at the running back position and having been the wide receiver coach for the last 2 years give us a unique blend of a coach that has a great understanding of the concepts that we're going to be teaching on a day-to-day basis. So from an offensive standpoint, again, we did not meet the goals that I was looking for, and I think anytime you step back, you have to evaluate all facets of your program. And we think these are significant changes that will improve our football program, and I believe they already have immediately in terms of the relationships, the communication, and the vision that we have on the offensive side of the ball. So just to recap, in terms of the offensive coordinator, Coach Martin will also be with the quarterbacks, and I will keep my focus with the offensive side of the ball as well. Also, Harry Heastant will be the run game coordinator and coordinate the running game. Mike Denbrock, passing game coordinator. Tony Alford, obviously slots and receivers and the recruiting coordinator. And then Scott Booker will be tight ends, and he will also have the role of special teams coordinator. I want to talk on that just a moment. You know, our special teams had its times last year. I thought we had some good times and then not such great times, so we had to evaluate the special teams. And quite frankly, it does not fall on Mike Elston's shoulders as to why we were inconsistent. We did not do the job as a staff. We did not, and I did not lead and direct that group in a manner that we should have. As I look at it now, Scott will coordinate it, but it will be a team approach. All the coaches will have a leadership role in special teams. Each one of our coaches, as it fits within our personnel. In other words, obviously some coaches will have more personnel on special teams than others. They'll have more involvement in special teams. But at the end of the day, this will be a shared approach as it relates to our special teams. We're all in it together, including myself and our 9 assistant coaches. So I want to make sure everybody doesn't leave here going, the special teams were taken away from Coach Elston. That couldn't be further from the truth. He's for me, done a great job in the years that I've had him as my special teams coach. I believe that the most important thing is that we, as a group, as a staff, take more ownership in special teams. That's why I made that decision to move it over to Scott Booker. On the defensive side of the ball, we did reach many of our goals. We still have a ways to go, as all units do. I don't think anybody's ever arrived, but we were pleased with a lot of things and the progress that Coach Diaco has led on the defensive side of the ball. You know, Bob has put together the defensive plan as we saw it when we got in here, and that was immediately, if we wanted to compete nationally at the highest level, we had to improve on the defensive side of the ball, and we've made that improvement. We hadn't made the kind of improvement I wanted on offense. That's why you've seen significant changes on the offensive side of the ball. On defense, we're able to keep great continuity there. Coach Diaco will also assume assistant head coach role, which will put him out as the face of the program when I'm not able to handle a lot of the assignments that fall under my duties as the head coach. Coach Diaco will be out there in front as well and serving in the role as assistant head coach. Kerry Cooks will now be our co-defensive coordinator, and that role will put him with the cornerbacks as a position group, but expand his role as it relates to game planning, as it relates to systems that he's going against each week relative to the passing game. So an expanded role for Kerry. And he's certainly somebody that we feel very, very comfortable with in expanding his role within our program. As I said, Mike Elston will continue in his role as the defensive line coach. And I think probably the most significant thing is that Mike now gets to focus strictly on his guys. He's got some dynamic players. He's got some guys that are developing quickly in our program. And he needs to focus his attention. And I told him that his focus is on that defensive line. We pulled him in a lot of different directions last year with special teams. Takes a lot of time out of you. And now he can focus strictly on the defensive line, and that's just going to make us a better football team. He's a very bright coach. Football it comes to him very easily, and it's going to be, I think, exciting from a defensive standpoint in that room that we can have Mike focused on the defensive line and our defensive game planning instead of having to worry about all the facets of our special teams. We added Bobby Elliott to the defensive staff and couldn't be more excited to have Bobby with us, a veteran coach, somebody that is coordinated at the highest level and has had great success along the way. Gives us, from a defensive standpoint, an incredible knowledge base. I think he will add not only to our preparation, but to the skill development of our players in the secondary. And Bobby's also a great recruiter for us, and he's got no boundaries as it relates to recruiting. He's been on the East Coast and the West Coast and the Midwest. He'll have a little bit of a role in all of those areas, but you know, I think when you talk about shared philosophy, you know, Bobby and Kerry and Bob all are very familiar with each other, very comfortable with each other, and that makes for great dynamics as you put together your defensive staff. So as we discuss all of the different facets of our staff, I think what I would sum it up with for me is that when you do not reach the goals that you're looking to reach, it's not just about your players. You have to evaluate players, you have to evaluate systems, you have to evaluate coaches. And today was to announce what I believe are some significant improvements within our staff that are going to allow us to move forward. We believe our foundation has been set. I'm very pleased with our players as it relates to their work ethic, the way they prepare, and now we're going to be able to prepare them even better for their performances on Saturday. And a lot of this is linked to Saturday performances. Our coaches are responsible for that. Our players are responsible. We're all linked in that together. And today was to talk specifically about what we feel and what I believe are some significant improvements within our staff. So I think that covers it as it relates to our full-time staff. We do have some changes, not changes, but our defensive, our graduate assistants. We have 2 new graduate assistants, and I know there'll be a long line to talk to both of those guys, so I'll hold off on getting into their specifics until we move further along here.
Raise your hand. Brian, right here.
Yeah.
It's not often at this level that a guy will jump from defense to offense in terms of assignments, especially when Chuck's going from safeties to coordinator role. What sort of inspired you at the start that would be the way you wanted to go with this, and why do you think that'll be effective?
Well, we were going to continue to run the same system on offense that we've employed when we got here. So no one had as much experience in that system than Chuck Martin. He's already been in a leadership position as a head coach. He's a proven head coach. He's a great communicator in front of the group. And when you're talking about offensive coordinator, it's not about what you put up on the blackboard. It's about your ability to lead and communicate. It's your ability to get your players to play at the level necessary. Chuck's already demonstrated that, and he brings with him the experience of knowing the offense that we're already running. So it really made for a very easy decision from that standpoint.
Having obviously coached with him and having that relationship with him, in a way, is it good? Is he a guy that will push back? He'll have a strong voice with you when you guys are putting together the game plan?
Yeah, you know, that's been talked about a lot. I don't know that I was looking for somebody that needed to push back as much as somebody that was a great communicator and could communicate clearly the message on a day-to-day basis. I didn't need somebody that, you know, was not on the same accord with me, that would challenge me every day. I get that every day, you know, from my entire staff. So I was really looking for, as it relates to Chuck, somebody that could communicate the message clearly across the board without any inconsistencies from group to group. And Chuck is a great communicator, and that's the strength that he brings to the staff that I saw.
Just a couple quick things. You'll still call plays on Saturday, I assume?
Yes.
Okay. And just in terms of you two evaluating quarterbacks in the spring, how do you proceed with that going into spring practice with that particular position group? Open competition, how would you describe it? Yeah,
I think it's pretty obvious. We've got 4, you know, quarterbacks that all can compete at the BCS level. Those are what our meetings are about right now, to be quite frank with you. You know, what do you guys do after signing day? Well, the question that you just asked, that's what we're posing in the staff meeting room. So we're designing a plan to go out and attack that. I think as we get closer, Brian, to spring ball, we'll probably have a better answer for you as to relates to specifically how we're going to go about and do that.
Brian, in the case with a guy like Bob Elliott, how much is chemistry a factor, having worked with Coach Yacko, Cooks, Alford, and so forth?
Well, chemistry was a factor in both hires, as well as the hire of Scott Booker. I want people, first of all, that I enjoy being around on a day-to-day basis. So anytime you're hiring, you want guys that you enjoy being around, that are passionate about what they do, and have a commonality with everybody in the staff, you know, philosophically. And I think that's what Bobby brings, and certainly his prior relationship with Kerry and Bob Diaco make that an easy fit. And then Harry has some connections with Coach Martin that allow that to be a very seamless transition for us as well.
And going off that with the staff similarities, do you have any relationship with Hayden Fry, and how's he influenced your coaching career in one way or another?
Obviously, we have a number of coaches that have either played or coached for Coach Fry that are on this staff, and some of it is coincidental. Others are based upon relationships that have been built over time. You know, this influx started with Coach Longo as my strength coach, and has continued down the road. And so, you know, when you go in one direction with a potential hire, and it works out very well for you, it starts to expand that network into those people that know each other. And I couldn't be more pleased and proud to have the coaches and players that have been with Coach Fry on the staff here at Notre Dame.
Brian, to your left here. Yeah. With regard to Scott Booker, can you give an example or a time or a moment in the recent past with him where you thought, hey, you know, this young guy's pretty sharp and somebody that deserves to be on our staff?
Yeah, because you really look at it and go, wow, probably could have had a long line of suitors for a position on Notre Dame's staff, and you went with a guy with, you know, MAC experience. But, you know, when you've been in it as long as I have, you know when you have the right fit. And as I said, Tim, part of it is chemistry, personality, knowledge of Notre Dame, love of Notre Dame. All those things go into the book before you even start to look at how they interact with players, Scott was an intern, so we didn't get a chance to do a lot of work on the field, but you could see he had a great relationship, I'll say, with Michael Floyd, had a great relationship with him. There were a lot of players that really tooted his horn relative to the opening on the staff, and not that it's a popularity contest, to get a staff position, but there were so many things, and I worked with him on a day-to-day basis, Tim. So, he was in the staff room every morning, first one in, last one to leave. All those things that you hear about it, it was an easy decision to name Scott to our staff.
And I guess in accordance with that, what makes you think that he will also be a good recruiter for you?
Well, I think any time that you're easily building relationships with your own players. And again, he didn't know any of the players when he got here. He had to build those relationships. They weren't given to him. He didn't play here. Not that that's not a good way to go as well, because we have David Grimes with us, who's going to be a graduate assistant for us in the fall. But when you know that somebody can articulate and communicate and is hardworking, those are the elements of recruiting. It's getting out there, and there's a lot of cold calling too that goes in this business. And he's not afraid to hear no, and he'll keep pushing through the process. And that's what I picked up, and that's why I'm very confident he'll be a great recruiter.
You mentioned Coach Heastand and his technique. I guess maybe in layman's terms, can you explain what the differences are in his technique compared to Coach Warner?
I just think it's more of a shared vision, Tim, with Chuck and I. And Chuck has a big piece in this because, at the end of the day, he's the leader of the group. He's the one that's going to be driving the train on a day-to-day basis. So I wanted to make sure that there was a shared vision in terms of the technique that's taught. As you know, last year we were a big gap and pull team last year. You'll see a little bit more zone influence with this offensive group, but I think it's more than anything else, it's Harry's great experience as an offensive line coach, having done it and have it succeeded, and really wanted somebody that his eyes were so focused on technique and development of the offensive line.
And what about his approach? I mean, is there a correlation there? Does the whole Joe Moore influence resonate with you?
Well, Joe Moore to me is one of the greatest offensive line coaches ever because his kids loved him. And I know from all the coaches that I talked to about Harry, his players loved him. From the NFL to college, they really enjoyed playing for Harry. And that's huge to me. When I pick up the phone and Kirk Ferentz says, listen, this is one of the best offensive line coaches that I've ever been around, that resonates with me. And it wasn't just Kirk, it was a number of coaches, and then former players that are former NFL players calling on his behalf. So all those things are very important in the hiring process.
Thank you.
Hey, Coach, how difficult is it to be a receiver in your offense? And the things
if you can catch and run, it shouldn't be hard at all. If you can't do those two things, it's definitely a lot more difficult. I would say that the only thing that's been difficult for our guys, really, if you look at it, is we've been so shorthanded. We just have not had the depth at that position, and it really forces us to redline those guys so much because we want to play fast, but we've been so low in numbers at that position, and then we've suffered an injury here or there, and that's why we are we're still recruiting wide receivers. So I don't think it's been hard from a schematic standpoint. It hasn't been hard from them picking things up because we don't blow a lot of assignments, but we still are short in the depth area, and it puts a lot of reps on guys, a ton of reps on guys in the way that we run our offense.
And in terms of the coaches with Mike Denbrock and Tony Alford sharing that, in terms of developing a receiver and then the next level, a game breaker, can you develop a game breaker, or is it just that guy?
I would rather recruit a game breaker, you know, versus developing a game breaker, to answer your question. But there's certainly guys that have a ways to go that we think can continually get better. So we feel like we're on the cusp of T.J. Jones breaking out. You know, I think Robbie Toma showed that, you know, he's earned more playing time. So those guys are going to obviously emerge. But yeah, we just want to keep recruiting game breakers and throw them out on the field and make it simple for them.
Coach, right in front. Can you just talk about the balance between obviously making changes on offense that you need to make to get where you want versus, you know, every one of your offensive players maybe having a new position coach, and obviously quite a few of them have had plenty of position coaches in their time here.
I think it can be a detriment if you're changing the vocabulary as to what you're teaching them. If it's the same message, which it is, and that's why Chuck is the offensive coordinator, if we're talking the same language and running the same formations and the same, you know, play structure, it's not very difficult at all, because you're moving from one classroom. You know, we talk about this all the time. You know, our guys go to class and get probably the most dynamic professors in front of them on a day-to-day basis, teaching them. So when they come here, you better meet or exceed that level, or you're going to lose your players. So all I think it means is that we're going to be more dynamic in the way we communicate to our players on a day-to-day basis, but it's going to be the same pieces that they've already heard.
You mentioned shared vision quite a bit today.
Yeah.
I was curious, just on a day-to-day basis, you know, away from what we see on Saturday, where does that really show itself? And I guess, how important is that to your staff overall?
It's absolutely crucial. And the specifics of that would be they manifest themselves in a sense that when you get out on the field, that everybody is on the same page. Every coach is talking the same language. Every player is hearing the same thing. And that's absolutely crucial to a shared philosophy and vision as to how we do things on a day-to-day basis. So I believe it shows itself when you get into the practice area. It shows itself on game day. And when you have that where everybody's on the same page, that's where it becomes nobody sees it and goes, boy, they look pretty good today. Well, it's probably because they're all on the same page.
And you mentioned kind of your offense, and Chuck knows your offense. I guess as you look at your first 2 years, do you feel like you've really run Brian Kelly's offense? You know,
we certainly have not had the success that we want offensively. But I would say more importantly, the consistency. I think we've shown signs of it. We haven't been able to do it consistently, and that's really why we're an 8-5 football team. We've been inconsistent as a football team. And so I think we have not got to where we want to be. We're not even really close to where I want to be. That's why we had the movement that we did on the offensive side of the ball.
And I guess just with Tony Alford, I believe he was approached, you know, by the Green Bay Packers for a position there. You just kind of talk about, I don't know if you have to re-recruit him or kind of what that experience was like for him, and just kind of how settled you are with him moving forward right now.
You know, I really think you know, when you have a great staff, Pete, you know, everybody's going to take a shot at your coaches. But, you know, in the NFL, this whole NFL infusion with college is they're looking for good people. And Tony Alford's a great person. You know, take away what he can do as a coach. The NFL, if you've watched Mike McCarthy, I think, you know, his running back coach was a wide receiver. His wide receiver coach was an offensive lineman. I mean, looking for good people. I got great people. So it wouldn't surprise me that the NFL would come calling each and every year. But I know our coaches, too, and they'll probably tell you when you get a chance to talk to them. This is a great place to be, and it's hard to leave Notre Dame.
I guess with the recruiting coordinator position,
yeah,
is some of that just that you can't be a OC and a recruiting coordinator in Chuck's role? How did you kind of decide to move that over to Tony?
Well, I think there's a skill set that goes along with that, and Tony's got a very good understanding of the recruiting process nationally, from coast to coast, and how to redirect our resources, and so his experience level of recruiting nationally, I think, is very important. Chuck showed that you can do it without that national experience. So I think, Tony brings that perspective, as well as, he's been in it a while, and he knows what it looks like out there. So it was an easy transition for us in moving him there.